Hello and welcome back to Create Craft Costume, where we think that creating is as close to magic as we are going to get. For our first sewing tutorial, we are making a coordinating set of pillowcases using Gryffindor, Slytherin, Hufflepuff, and Ravenclaw fabric. Keep watching for more. Hello everyone! Welcome to our first time in Cheryl's sewing studio. So, my name is Ashley. You've seen me in a couple previous videos. This is Cheryl. I am her geeky apprentice.
My name is Cheryl. This is my sewing studio. Ashley and I have been working together for quite some time now. I am a professional tailor, sat for the exam in England many moons ago, but I've been sewing for over 50 years. So I'm trying to share that information with Ashley, and she had a great idea to put it out in the world. So here we are.
Hang along for the ride. Hit that subscribe if
It'll
you
be fun.
So for our first sewing tutorial, I wanted to tackle the infamous burrito pillowcase method. And I know that if you look on YouTube, you can see multiple examples of this. A couple of them have been viewed over 1 million times. So what I want to do is explain why ours is different. So I'm really particular in the way that I like things to look, particularly with directional fabric. So for an example, I have some Harry Potter fabric that it was from Joann's. It's no longer available. This was pre-pandemic, but it just makes me happy. It's very symmetrical. It runs up and down. It's very beautiful. But if you cut this the standard pillowcase method, this does not run up and down. It runs like this. And you take that symmetry and you break it, and it makes it just, I can't do it. I could not make this. So instead, I asked Cheryl, how do we fix this? How do I get this to run the way that I want it to? And not only that, how do I get it to run the way I want it to no matter which way I put the pillowcase on the bed? So with that being said, this is not a 15-minute tutorial. I know you could, if you want that, go look it up. This is how you can make the best pillowcase possible, which is going to take a little bit more effort. But if you are here for things that look really pretty, like aesthetic purposes, we are your people. So with that being said, I know the first question that you're going to go, okay, do the dimensions stay the same? Do I have to buy the same amount of fabric? I can't tell you how to buy fabric because I am physically incapable of buying the exact amount for a project. And I have had pieces where she's smiling because she has helped me and I have been left over with like 3 or 4 yards because I am so paranoid about running out of fabric. Case in point, I ran out of Slytherin for this and I'm still mad about it. So all of the pillows I had planned are made and this is what I had left over. So I'm not going to talk about fabric length at all. I'm going to turn that over to Cheryl and she's going to talk about how you should buy the fabric for this.
Okay, so you are in the fabric store. You have your 3 pieces of fabric that you've chosen to make your pillowcases. Now what do? Most of the other tutorials out there will tell you go to the counter, have them cut a 27-inch piece for the body, have them cut a 3-inch piece for the accent, and a 9-inch piece for the cuff. I would recommend not doing that because that is assuming that the fabric on the bolt is cut straight and that the person cutting the counter, who may have already been there for a long time, is going to cut it straight. I've got a picture here that will show you why you cut it in 1 piece. So the body and the cuff, cut it in 1 piece as in 1 yard. Come home, make your cut of 27 inches and your cut of 9 inches. Then you can square it up. You are in control of that. You've got enough fabric to make it work. And then you buy the 1/8 of a yard of the accent piece, right? That's what it's called. Rather than 3 inches, because it's very difficult to cut a piece in a fabric store 3 inches. So you'll have a little bit of waste, but it's going to be safe for you to cut that by that 1/8 of a yard for your accent piece. So that is with non-directional fabric. Very, very simple. Now, directional fabric is a different ball game because you have to buy more fabric for the body. The cuff will still be the same. The accent piece will be the same. The body will be different. Instead of 27 inches, you need 1.25 for the body only. So there's the difference. And then in just a few minutes, we'll show you how to cut that directional fabric.
Before we get started cutting, I want you to understand the pattern and what you typically follow for a pillowcase. If you look on any standard YouTube tutorial, they'll mention 3 measurements. They'll mention 9, 3, and 27. This is for a standard pillowcase. So if you're doing any other size, these measurements have to change. But here's something that's really important, is the body cut is 27, and cut does not mean the finished length. Cut means literally how large your piece of fabric needs to be to use. So that includes your seam allowance, and seam allowance will get you every time if you are not paying attention to it. So this body is 27. The accent piece, you actually just put right on top of this body part, so it does not add any length to this. So truthfully, you can make this accent piece as big or as small as you want. The standard cut size is 3 with a standard 1/2 inch seam allowance. When you fold this over, this becomes about 1 inch wide. Same thing with the cuff. The cuff, when it says cut 9 inches, your cuff is not 9 inches. Okay, so if you're paying attention to this, your total finished pillowcase should be about 30 inches long. And the length of a bolt of fabric is 42 to 45. Understanding both of these is really important to understanding directional fabric, because you are cutting directional fabric the opposite way that you will do non-directional fabric. So if you notice, the most important thing here is 27 plus 9 does not equal 30. Okay, you have to pay attention to your seam allowances, or you'll end up with a lot shorter of a pillowcase, or with too long of a pillowcase by the time you're done. With that being said, 36 total inches should be about your cut size, and knowing that, when you work with Cheryl, she changes patterns or doesn't use patterns all the time. So this is what I learned with pillowcases with her.
Well, Ashley's right. I don't use patterns very often because I think the fabric speaks to me. So I have to look at the fabric and see, how do I want to make this? So as long as you understand, like she said, your finished pillowcase is going to be about 30 inches. That's how much that's how much space you have to work with. So say I had a really cool piece of fabric that the pattern direction on it was 9 inches, and I wanted a 9-inch border. You just shorten this piece. If you lengthen the cuff, you shorten the body. In this example, we decided that we wanted a 5-inch finished border or cuff. So easy. We cut this 12 inches. If we're going to cut this 12 inches, we take that out of here. So as she said, 12 and 24 do not equal 30, because that is your cut length, not your finished length. So we are going to have it be 36 inches long, allowing for our seam allowances. Now say on this same pillowcase, I wanted a 12-inch border, which is finished at 5. If you get the math, you've got the 12 then you've got your seam allowance. I wanted to have this be 4 inches. That is not going to change the length of this at all, because it sits right on top, does not change. You can be all kinds of fancy with this. The rule of thumb is it has to be 36 inches, however you break it up. Make sense? Now, when you bring your fabric home from the store, it's going to look like this. It's folded on one edge, and you have the 2 selvages over here. This is what's called the selvage, and your fold is over here. This fabric is typically 42 to 45 wide, measuring across here. This is directional. So if we were going to cut our pillowcase, the 27 inches, this way, it's going to sit like this.
It looks ugly.
And it does look ugly. Thanks, Ashley. It does look ugly. We want it to sit like this on our bed. So you see the letters right side up and the words right side up. The little ravens are upside. They are ravens, right?
Yes, they are.
Okay, they are ravens. Sit the right way up. So we have to cut the fabric differently. Now, for example, here is a standard pillowcase cut with non-directional fabric. So this one, you can see, if we just cut our 27 inches across this piece, it would be just great because it's not going to be a problem with the direction. The flowers go every which way. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our 27 inches, opening up this fabric like this. And you might think that we could fold it and have our 27 inches go this way and go around this way. Well, we could, but then guess what? On the back side of our pillow, it's upside down. Not going to work. Now, funny side note, this never occurred to me before I met Ashley because it just never occurred to me. So we are going to cut two pieces, 27 inches long for the body of the pillowcase, 22 inches wide, and then we're going to flip the other one upside down. So when we have it, one side will be the right side. This will also be flipped the other way. So we're going to go like this. I'm going to measure our 27 inches right there. We're going to cut it. Okay, so here we've got our 27-inch piece. I just opened it up, what I cut off. That's our 27 inches for the body of the pillowcase. But as you can see, it's too wide. So your fabric is 45 wide, which half of that is 22. So we need to make this 22 inches this way to go across. And we're on this pillowcase, we're going to have a seam on both sides because we're turning the fabric because it is directional. So now we're going to get it to be 22 inches. And a little tip from me, I measure from the raw edges to here, and then I'm going to cut it here, so then I have one strip on the fold that's longer. I could cut from the fold, but then I'd have two small pieces down here where one longer piece on this side is going to be more useful for doing trim on another pillowcase or whatever my little heart desires or little Ashley's heart desires on our next project.
Does that 22 include seam allowance?
It does include a seam allowance. So we're doing that, and then another trick for me is if you fold it over in half, you have less to cut, and it's going to make it easier and to keep it straight. So we're going to put it down on the 22 right here, and across we go. Line that up. Okay, now I'm not going to turn it till I open it up and show you what we've done. So there's my two pieces. One, 27 by 22. That's one side of the pillow. Look, all the R's and the ravens are perfect. Turn it over. Oh, yikes, they're still upside down. But that's why I'm going to do it like this. Turn it around. Now both sides of the pillowcase are right. And we've got it cut.
And that means you can put it on any side of the bed.
That's right.
You don't have to keep it on one side because one side's upright and one side's not.
Which is a very valid point because that gets really old to always have to put your pillowcase on per size. All right, now before we go any further on this piece, because we need to make it be 45 to match the cuff and the trim, we are going to sew this one little seam right there. So it's a 45-inch piece of fabric. I'm doing my first French seam. And the reason I'm doing a French seam rather than a regular seam is because if I don't do it now, when I put the cuff on this end, I won't be able to enclose those edges, which is precisely the purpose of a French seam. A French seam is sewn right sides together like this, and you sew a 1/4 inch seam, teeny, teeny, tiny. Then after you sew that.
But she meant wrong sides together first.
I do mean wrong sides together, absolutely.
But everyone here is right sides, which is why you're like, no, that's wrong. For French seams, it's not wrong.
That is absolutely correct. And as you can tell, Ashley and I have had this discussion many times. But it's wrong sides together. You're going to sew that along there, and then once it's sewn, we're going to turn it on the inside and sew it again so all your edges are enclosed.
If you don't cut it as straight as you want, what is the benefit of trimming it now?
Because you will get little hairy threads sticking through, and that is my OCD and drives me nuts. I've sewn my little 1/4 inch seam. I've trimmed it down because I don't want any little threads to stick through. And now we're going to press that little seam to one side. Would have helped if I turned my iron on, which I didn't. So we'll just give it just a weighted. Did you know that you don't always have to have heat? You can just use the weight of the iron to get a little bit of a crease if that's all you need. Sometimes when you're doing really lightweight fabrics, you get a little bit nervous of the heat. So this will give me everything I need right now, just without the heat. Okay, so now I've got that seam. Now we're going to go just like this. It's nice and flat, so you can put that seam right at the crease like that. You see the seam? It's right there at the top. We're going to between that, and we are going to sew right there and encase all of those raw edges. So now I've sewn that seam right down there, and then voila, look at the right side. No little hairs peeking out. There's my seam. Now the reason I sewed it in white thread is because I wanted you to see the stitches. But look, this is your inside. Isn't that a beautiful inside seam? Just zigzag is great, serging is great, but they will in time fray. This will be enclosed and it looks beautiful. Personally, I think it's quicker to do than serging or zigzag. Personal opinion.
If you cut it right.
Yes.
As a pressing side note, most of the time you don't see pressing clips, but if you're of my younger generation, you may not have been taught how to iron growing up. And Cheryl turns this into an art form. So I'll be showing her clips so that you see exactly how to move the fabric and get the best out of your time pressing. So you will know you have done this right when you have two R's going the opposite direction, because that means none of it will be upside down when you put it on your bed.
And Ashley will be so happy.
Yep.
Okay, so what we have done is we have made our own piece of directional fabric, now a two-way piece of directional fabric with the seam right there. So this is all ready to go. This is the body of our fabric. Now we're going to do the cuff. Cuff is the blue, and as you can see, this is not directional. How happy is that? So
that's a rare thing for me.
It is a rare thing. So this one we just cut straight on. We don't need to make any changes. We need a piece of fabric 9 inches long. So we're going to come right up here, and we're going to go to 9 inches. And I don't know if you're asking, why 9 inches? Because we are going to fold it up in half, so when we're through, our cuff will be 4 inches. But in order to do that, we have to cut it 9. We'll just put a brand new blade in. Okay, there's our 9. And then the little contrast piece is 3. For the same reason, when we put it in, it will be folded in half inside the seam. This does not add anything to the length of the pillowcase. It just is for sheer aesthetic gorgeousness. And as you can see, I always fold mine in half. It just makes less cutting. And you can see this is not very straight, which is usually the case with fabric. So we're going to straighten up this edge. Good night. Ashley, I have defective equipment here.
And this is why she hates rotary blades.
I am not a fan of rotary blades. I truly am not. Okay, so we're going to do it 3. And I'm using great restraint not to reach for my scissors.
Because she can't find them.
Oh, Ashley. She does give me grief. Let's see. And I just put a brand new blade in this dumb thing.
She's not lying there.
Okay, so now how this is put together. This is our cuff. Dun, 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 dun. Now we're going to make the burrito. This is going to fold in half, right sides together, obviously. And I'm going to just run over and just press this just really quick so it will lay flat inside of this. Now, so the way to put this burrito together is this is our taco shell. This is what we're going to wrap this up, our soft taco shell. This will be, I don't know, some tomato sauce. Cheese. This is our cheese. I'm going to put this in like this. And this is going to be too long, which is fine. I'm going to put this along like this. So that's next. Then what we're going to do is we're going to get the meat and the salsa and all the other good stuff that goes in our burrito. And face down, right sides together, we're going to put this right here. And then to stabilize all of this, because we're going to have some layers, we put some pins in.
Does it matter which selvage you choose to line it up with?
Does not matter. Just as long as they're all lined up. And you don't want any puckers in this. So I always slide my hand along to make sure we have it nice and smooth. Now, your fabrics probably won't all be the same length. That's why I say fabric comes 42 to 44 wide, some's 45 wide. So don't worry about that. We'll fix that at the end. Okay, now here's this would have been our fold normally with us. That's where we put our seam.
If you're using non-directional fabric, that isn't there.
Nope, it will be a fold. Now, we're going to take all of our meat sauce, our salsa and tomatoes and all that good stuff, and we're going to pile it in this burrito shell. We're going to roll it up and roll it up, roll it up, till you can see the other side of the shell. Then we're going to take that shell and we're going to bring it right up here. And when you're pinning this, you want to make sure that all your meat sauce is down inside. You don't want any leaking out. While I'm pinning this, are anybody curious why we put pins in this way instead of this way? Ashley's curious. I was trained as a tailor in England. In England, I put the pins in the other way. Ashley asked me one day, so why do you put the pins in that way? It sticks me all the time. And you know what? She's right. This way, the pins don't get you so much. And they're easier to take out if you're sewing along them. So look at that.
It makes hand sanitizer a lot nicer to use too.
Okay, we've got a few pins in here. And if you look in the side, what does that look like? Looks like a burrito. Okay, we're gonna go sew that. Sewn all along there. Now comes my favorite part of all time. Turn that first part back and start pulling out all the meat sauce that you just stuck in there. Pull right on out. I'm not the best at this. We made pillowcases for my daughter and her family for all of the holidays. And they have 3 children, so it was 5 pillowcases for all the holidays. And this was my husband's job. I'd sew them and he'd turn them inside out. So. But are you ready? Because this is pretty awesome, pretty cool. Especially cool with directional fabric. See how everything is enclosed on the wrong side? Now look at this. Da 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 da. On the right side. Everything is all enclosed. No raw edges, no frays anywhere. So that was the one seam that we sew. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to press this flat, and then we're going to sew the outside and the bottom of the pillowcase with French seams, and we are done.
Now, as a Harry Potter fan side note, like I've mentioned, I am particular about a couple of things. And you may be looking at that side piece saying, that is not the Ravenclaw colors. And you're right. In the book, the Ravenclaw colors are blue and bronze. However, the movie changed the Ravenclaw colors to blue and silver. And as a Harry Potter fan who has been purchasing fabric for several years, I can tell you that finding the bronze coordinating fabric is rather difficult. In fact, I think that had a part to play in why they decided to change those colors. However, I am happy to say that in part 2 of our tutorial, you are going to see a Ravenclaw pillowcase with bronze fabric. So you will be seeing both options. You don't need to comment saying that those aren't the real Ravenclaw colors. I know that, but you will see 2 options based on the fabric that is easier for you to find at your stores.
Now, as you may have noticed, I pressed it very lightly on this wrong side because I wanted this to be flat against that, so I didn't want this to be curved, because if you get a buckle right here or you don't get it pressed away, guess what? Your cuff won't be straight. So that's why I pressed very lightly, and then I pressed over here, so that's just as flat as it can be. And that is our beautiful cuff. So now we're going to do a French seam, and I'm a nut on pressing. I'm just here to tell you, if you want your items to look good, press them. We will talk more about pressing in another video. So now we're putting, again, wrong sides together. And you can see it doesn't line up exactly, which is just fine. It's not all fabric is the same width. Put this together. I usually put a seam just in the corner, so we'll have that point. And over here where we had that seam, see, old habits die hard. I put the pin in the wrong way. And then we line this right up like that. It's critical to make sure these seams line up, so when your pillowcase opens, it's not skiwampalous. So you want to make sure that lines up right there. I'm putting those seams together right there.
Here's the difference between what Cheryl makes and what I do. Yeah, I was just learning. It's fine. This is like a year old.
She is much better than she puts on to be. And I'm probably just going to trim off this little bit of extra right here, because we don't need that. Okay, so I'm doing exactly the same thing as I did before. 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to pivot at the corner, come this way, I'm going to turn it inside out, press it, and sew it again.
And if you don't cut this close enough, all that little fraying that she's cutting out right now, yeah, that shows up on the other side. This is a very important step. Ask me how I know this.
All right, I'm going to go press it. all enclosed. It occurred to me while I was sewing just now that I should explain, it probably looked like I sewed a little bit more than a 1/4 inch seam, and then why did I trim this off? This little hairy stuff that sticks out from the selvage, that's where the fabric was tied at the end to weave it, and that I just always sew inside of that and trim that, because right next to the selvage is never your best fabric. So if all possible, trim off that selvage. It's just going to give you a better finished product. So that's why all those little hairy ends were cut off. Okay, so we've got that sewn now. I've turned this inside out. No, that is not true. I've turned it right side out. And here is our finished pillowcase. Now, as I said, I was trained in England as a tailor. I think everything should look as pretty on the inside as the outside. That's the outside. This is the inside. No raw edges, no threads. It is just beautiful. One seam you should learn to do is a French seam. It is just, it's lasting, it's strong, it's beautiful seam. Okay, that sums it up for this tutorial. Next time we will show you what to do with any extra fabric you have to put it into a coordinating pillowcase with non-directional fabric. I forgot what else I'm supposed to say. Oh, so have fun with this. There's all kinds of things you can do. Be creative, put your own fun into these pillowcases and have a great time. Enjoy making pillowcases with directional and non-directional fabric.
Thank you again for watching. If you like what you see, please make sure to comment, like, share it, and it really does help our channel. So if you want to like or comment, tell us which Ravenclaw color would you prefer. Would you prefer the bronze or the silver? If you're not a Harry Potter fan, that's okay. You can tell me whether you would actually go through all this effort or not. So please make sure to subscribe and you'll catch our part 2 video and we'll post it next week. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.